What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma here with my first Fallout 76 video after launch, and today I would like to talk about some perks to avoid in Fallout 76. Now, before we start, this video is going to go over some of what I think are some of the lesser perks in this game, and if you decide to pick up Fallout 76, you may find some of my recommendations to be useful. While I suppose it's fair to point out that perk cards can simply be unequipped and the consequences of picking a bad perk card aren't really that big of a deal, there are perk cards that I think should generally be avoided. Mostly because I find that they tend to be either redundant or just a waste of points in general. Now, it's definitely possible that there are more than just 10 bad perks in this game, so if you didn't see one here that you wish was included, feel free to let us all know what it is in the comments section below. Otherwise, and in no particular order, these are 10 of what I would consider to be some perk cards that you're going to want to avoid in Fallout 76, starting now. Number 1. Concentrated Fire. Now, this may be a controversial pick for some people, as the ability to select limbs in VATS does allow for potentially more damage. Especially if you aim at a particular enemy's weak spot like the heads of most humanoid-type enemies, or maybe the belly on something like a Deathclaw. However, and in my opinion, Concentrated Fire is more so a casualty of the changes to Fallout 76's VATS system, where you're going from what was once a stop time or slow time system to a real-time system. Unlike previous Fallout games where the player is able to really take their time and make precision shots to specific body parts in VATS, players in Fallout 76 have to be much quicker on their feet and pull off shots faster, and having to try and target a specific body part in what is such a short time window isn't really practical. There's also the fact that the ability to target specific body parts is just clumsy. If you're playing with a controller, the right stick ends up controlling where you aim as well as your ability to turn, making what should be a great skill to use on the fly far more difficult than it really should be. Maybe you can make this perk work for you if you're totally stationary while shooting, but if you're moving around and shooting, this perk isn't going to work too well for you, and it's probably just best if you just avoided it entirely. Number 2. Travel Agent. So, at first glance, Travel Agent seems like it would be a pretty nice perk since it reduces the cost and bottle caps of fast traveling to a given location. And I must admit, if you're fast traveling to literally every single location you're going to, or if you're spending quite a bit of money at in-game vendors, the benefits of this perk may pay off for you. However, I think there are simply too many ways to get free fast travels that taking on the Travel Agent perk isn't really worth it. Specifically, it seems like regardless of where you are on the map, and as long as you're not over-encumbered, you can always fast travel to your camp for free. Given that you can simply move your camp around as you see fit, with proper planning, you can potentially avoid paying fast travel costs in one direction. Additionally, there are numerous settlements across Appalachia, like the Mega Red Rocket Truck Stop that the player can capture, and assuming one of these is under your control, you can simply fast travel there for free as well, cutting down on your overall fast travel costs. In the end, I think there are ways around this perk, and you can avoid it fairly easily, so why even pick it up? Number 3. The Leadbelly perk. Now, I think there are two different ways to look at Leadbelly. On the one hand, being able to prevent radiation from a specific source, which in this case is eating and drinking, would seem like it would be a wise thing to do. Especially since Fallout 76 requires the player to properly maintain their hunger and thirst levels, and the majority of food and drink items that you can come across in this game incur some amount of radiation to the player. On the other hand, I think a better strategy is to simply accept that radiation damage is a fact of life in Fallout 76. Rad damage is an inevitability, and it will happen to you regardless of whether you want it to or not. I also think, and in my experience, I rarely incur enough radiation to where it can't be healed with just a little bit of rad away every once in a while. There's also the fact that Leadbelly only prevents radiation from one source and doesn't protect against environmental sources of radiation, which are more deadly anyway. So I think that's something to consider as well if you plan on taking up this perk. If you ask me, Leadbelly was a fairly lame perk in Fallout 4, and it's also a pretty lame perk in Fallout 76. Number 4. Portable Power. Now, I've got to admit that this isn't even a perk that I've gotten yet, but I think I can already tell you that it's going to be pretty lousy. While the ability to reduce the weight of all power armor parts as well as the weight of a chassis in your inventory can be an appealing thing, there are a couple of things you should consider. First and foremost, once a power armor piece is equipped to a given power armor chassis, including the one you are wearing, its weight is effectively reduced to 0. This means that as long as you don't pick up any extraneous power armor parts and you just stick with the armor pieces that you've equipped, weight is never an issue. There's also the fact that in the case of a chassis, at best, they weigh about 10 pounds in your inventory. While this may seem like quite a bit, this is far less than what most armor pieces weigh, and while I suppose weight reduction in this area isn't a bad thing, wouldn't you rather reduce the weight of your energy weapon ammo with a perk like batteries included, which is going to also be in the intelligence tree? In my mind, that option would make more sense, and all portable power would really be good for is the niche situation where you need to fast travel, and equipping the perk would reduce your weight limit enough to be able to fast travel. Ultimately, I don't see much use for this perk, and I think you could do a lot better. Number 5. Natural Resistance. A lot of the disease-based perks in this game are of questionable value in my opinion, and while disease prevention is certainly useful, I think there are simply too many other ways to prevent a disease to really justify using a perk card to do so. This is especially the case for a perk like Natural Resistance, which makes it less likely to catch a disease from the environment that you're in. The thing is, in the case of this perk in particular, why not just wear something like a gas mask to prevent airborne disease? Or in the case of similar perks that reduce your chance to get diseases from ingesting food or water, why not just cook your food and eat it within a given time limit so it doesn't spoil? At that point, you really only have to worry about diseased creatures, and even then, they're probably not going to be that frequent, and as long as you make a point to take them out first before taking out any of the other enemies you encounter, you're probably not going to have too many problems incurring diseases. All in all, I think most disease prevention perks can be avoided, and you may find that there are other perks from the endurance category that are just better. So I'd recommend you go with almost anything else. Number 6. Moving Target. So this is another one of those perks that's returning from Fallout 4, and much like its Fallout 4 version, its effects are only active while sprinting, meaning you can only receive the damage reduction while you're running at full clip. However, and unlike Fallout 4, moving target in 76 doesn't reduce action point cost, and also doesn't work if you just so happen to be using power armor. Given that power armor is so great for defense in this game, and even a blank frame tends to be better than most non-power armor pieces for defense, I wonder if losing power armor is truly worth the damage reduction that you can receive while sprinting. Especially since when you're not sprinting, you're not receiving any damage reduction at all. For me personally, this perk is a skip. Just avoid it, and I think you'll find that you'll be a lot happier. Number 7. Hard Bargain. In my humble opinion, bottle caps are a lie in Fallout 76. While you can certainly encounter the occasional vendor at a given location across the game, the prices there are already pretty ridiculous, and given how stingy the game is with awarding you bottle caps for your services, visiting a vendor for various goods tends to be a losing strategy. Even if you manage to amass a ridiculous amount of bottle caps, you're better off saving them for fast traveling or some other endeavor rather than spending any of that you receive at vendors. There's also the fact that Fallout 76's crafting system can usually emulate the functions of most vendors provided you have the proper crafting stations. If you need to restore some HP, simply go hunt for some creatures that yield meat and cook them. Alternatively, if you're looking for something like ammo, you can also craft that as well at a tinker bench. The thing is, provided you're looting enough resources from the enemies and locations you visit, you should have plenty of resources to go around to craft the vast majority of things that you would ever need. In the end, I just recommend you save your bottle caps for something else and avoid taking on this perk or visiting vendors entirely. Number 8. Fortune Finder. As I stated with the last entry, bottle caps in Fallout 76 are a lie. While it's certainly nice that a skill like Fortune Finder can make acquiring more easier, you're going to find that bottle caps are really best used for fast travel rather than purchasing any in-game items. Provided you're playing through the game smartly, and just in my experience, you should rarely, if ever, encounter a situation where you need a plethora of bottle caps. After all, you can usually craft almost everything you can buy, or in the case of more difficult to get resources like stim packs or purified water, you can usually get by while using them sparingly and receiving more of them by completing in-game missions. If you really want a directional audio-based skill to help you locate things, get something like Panopictographist, which allows you to help find perk magazines, or something like Perceptibobble, which helps you find bobbleheads. I think both would be far more useful and practical than picking up a perk that helps in finding bottle caps that you're probably never going to use. Number 9. Through Hiker. Some of you may disagree, but I think the vast majority of weight reduction perks that affect consumables in particular are sort of pointless. While it may be nice to stockpile tons of food on your person at any given time, the problem is that when it comes to food specifically, it can spoil, meaning whatever you make or cook should be consumed within a reasonable amount of time of cooking it. There's also the fact that the average food/drink consumable in Fallout 76 weighs less than half a pound anyway, meaning you can store plenty provided you've allocated about 30 to 40 pounds for food. Hypothetically, and at those numbers, you should be able to carry anywhere between 30 to 80 consumable items, which is truly substantial and probably more than you would ever need. While it might be nice to carry somewhere between 60 to 160 food items, is it really worth the cost of 3 special points in the agility tree? If you would like a better alternative to this perk, I would recommend picking up the Good with Salt perk from Luck, which reduces the rate at which food spoils. In my mind, that tends to make more sense, as that will get you more use out of the food consumables you have, rather than just being able to carry more. In my mind, this perk is a skip, and I would recommend avoiding it, especially if you're heavily invested in agility already and trying to do something like increase the damage of your pistols. And finally, number 10, the Goat Legs perk. Now, I'll admit this is another perk that I don't have, but the answer to why this is a perk that should be avoided should be fairly obvious to fans of power armor, and that is that fall damage immunity always trumps fall damage reduction. By simply equipping a piece of power armor before you take a planned fall, you can pretty much negate all fall damage you would have incurred, and you don't have to take the time to open your perk card menu to swap to the proper perk. Sure, I suppose Goat Legs doesn't weigh anything, but the defense benefits of equipping power armor far outweigh any potential issues you might have with weight. Not to mention that all Goat Legs does is provides damage reduction during falls, meaning that you can still die with Goat Legs if you fall from a high enough height. Conversely, and with power armor, high falls are pretty much a non-issue since you're basically immune to fall damage. In my mind, given the prevalence of power armor, this Goat Legs perk is totally unnecessary, and is definitely something that you should avoid. Alright guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video and found it to be helpful, feel free to leave a like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload more videos, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.